Okay, so now the base is nicely screwed in and it's all in line, loads of pencil marks, triple check the measurements. As you can see, I just wanted to show you these, don't know what they are, kind of reservoirs, troughs and all the rest of it. They're actually quite strong, and by the looks of it, originally they were screwed in by those two on the base, just to support it, and I think the whole thing actually stood on these. But as you can see, my battens have now got to line up with these supporting ridges all the way around. I've got one in the middle, so all that remains now is to just roll that back. As you can see there, it fits between the two reservoirs. That comes over here and it's in. Take this away, start the cutting process, and then, to be honest with you, once I've done that, I'll build the wall to marry in with this. So I can actually fix this to the floor by those two troughs I've just shown you, and build the wall up to this. Makes it a little bit easier to do that way. Well, for me it does anyway, because as I say, if I'm not fixing this in permanently, then I can just remove this ad lib, get the plates in, screw it all down, and that's it. That's my next job, is to mark up where the hatch is going to go, take this away, mark up the inner properly, start the cutting process, and then start to build the frame for the wall. Right, welcome back. So, as you can see, I've done a bit of artwork on the wall, and you can see the outline of the top of the loo. What I've done is I've also drawn a horizontal line, and if you look at the actual size of the toilet, that's because this bit here is a nice blocked off bit. I don't really care about that, so I want the door to be just in line with that bottom there. Reason for that is that the blue flush bit needs to be able to come out, so I'm keeping that line there. That's the top of my door. Because I want it to be an accurate cut, I really need to separate this back plate from the front. Now, a lot of these hinges have lovely little push out hinges, so all you got to do is to put that in there, push it upwards. You can see now that the pin has come out, I can just slide that out and separate the two. There's two of these, so I've got to do one the other side, so I'm just going to quickly do that. By the way, in case anyone's thinking I've done this before, the answer is no. As I said in loads of videos, this is the first time I've ever had a motorhome, and the first time I've ever attempted this sort of stuff. So, but as an ex-engineer, it all makes common sense to me. Right, so if that was on the outside, you can imagine it's going to go that way round. And now if I line it up, yeah, you can see it's not far off. Right, all that remains now is to cut along that line. I have an edge cutter, or what they call a multi-tool. I'm going to favour that. For the curves around the edge, I'm just going to use a Stanley knife. Sounds really odd, but thin ply like this, you can cut with a Stanley knife. You just got to be patient, steady hand, and just keep going around that line. The reason I want to keep that is because obviously the back end of all of this door is this lovely piece like that. I can use this offcut, upcycle it, put it inside of that, and I'll have a nice finish to the inside of the hatch. What you need to do now is to offer the plate up. This is going to be the outside plate, but the key to this is, obviously I'm lining it up with this edge here, which is where the wall's going to go. But what I need to do is have it so that there's about 1 millimetre or so gap there on the outer edge. Now, the key to this is you've got to do this from the outside of the plastic, so you've got to run a biro along that edge, which I can't do while I'm holding the phone. Don't mark it from the inside, because the thickness of this plastic door, if you cut it to this side, then it ain't going to fit. So you need to mark it and cut it to the outside, so when it's up like that, you have a slightly bigger hole, and then this framework, in theory, should slide into that hole, so it should fit quite nicely. Anyway, that's the theory. Now what I've got to do is mark it and then cut it. Okay, so as you can see, I've cut the hole. In the end, I ended up using a multi-tool, which, if you ever got one, is one of those. Small blade on that, absolutely cuts through aluminium like butter. The tough parts, obviously, are the joins, where the outer skin joins together. But to show you what the result is, that was the plate I cut out in one go. As you can see, pretty good job. That will fit in the new door. So you see, it's much bigger than the new door, so I can cut that to shape in a while and glue that in. But first, what I have to do is to actually sort out a frame, because these wooden frame, these back plates and that go into these doors on the outside have screw holes, and they've got to have something to screw into. Now, unless you're really lucky and having loads of buttons around, you have to make your own. So this is the first piece I've got. I've already pre-cut this. That just sits in there. As you can see, it's nice and level on the outside, not so level on the inside, but I can trim that off with a standing knife. That's not a problem. What I have to do, to make sure it doesn't move around too much, I'm going to put a couple of screws, 20mm screws in there, just to hold the batten on the inside, and that way, when I screw the batten, so I screw the hatch cover on the outside, it will go through. I'll have to drill a pilot hole, but it will go through this aluminium into this wood and give it something to grip to. And that's just a belt and braces. It's a good way of doing it. I've got a number of battens to go around. I've got to cut this one to height, because I've got a batten piece running through the wall there. But as you can see, once I've cut that, that will slot in there quite nicely, and yeah, it'll look good. Time to crack on. Okay, as you can see, I've now cut the hole nicely. Now we're at the point where we're putting this stuff in, which is the good old Stickerflex 522. Now I'm going to put this, as you can see, there's a bit of a gap here, so I'm going to fill it around here on the inside of this, because obviously once you've done the screws through, if there's any water or moisture gets in, it's got two barriers to get through instead of just the one. So one on the inside, and obviously I'm going to bead round that when I come to put the plastic on. The reason for that is for things like this overlap here. You got a flat surface coming down this edge, as you can see it's raised there, and then there's a drop off there, so you just need to put loads and loads of gunge in that section, and obviously there as well, until it kind of flattens out. So that's the next job, and this is the tool I'm going to use. And once that's done, I shall offer up the plates, which I've already tried in the hole now. As you can see, that's going to look really good when that's done. I've also pre-drilled all the holes. That's all pre-done. It's just a case now of putting the bonding on the inside, and then running a bonding around there, around the outside, putting this in place, and then screwing it into place, and then hanging the door. And that's about it. Okay, so next stage. As you can see, I've done the door. Now I've reused the plywood that was taken out from this cutout. Always good to do that. Nobody's actually going to see this, because you can see from this pencil line, this is where the actual toilet cassette is going to go, so that's fine. So really what's left to do now is to get my new wall in. As you can see, what I've done is I've made a framework up here. Very simple frame, doesn't need to be anything special, but what I have done is put 12mm ply here. The reason being is the back of the toilet has a bracket which needs to be mounted on this piece, and then the toilet actually hooks on it and then fixes to the ground. Okay, welcome back. So as you can see, the new stud partition, or whatever you want to call them, framework as I call it, is in place. You can see it's now butted up quite nicely against the base for the actual toilet itself, which means I'll be able to hang my bracket in a minute. But meantime, word to the wise, if you're going to do this, run your cold and hot water pipes and your gas pipes first before you put the toilet on. I'm lucky enough I've got a wife who spotted that. Right, and now as you can see, that's all done. The brackets are actually not too hard to put in, as long as you mark the position of where they're supposed to go. It's just one long piece. You then measure the height of the slots, and as luck would have it, I don't know if you can see this, the height of the slot there is right on the edge of my board. If it wasn't, you'd have to reach inside and mark that line, and then obviously mark a corresponding line with the bracket and just screw it on. And what I'm going to do now is just lift this up if I can one-handed. There's the bracket, as you can see, screwed in place. It's got these tongues which locate in the back of these slots, and all you have to do is to lift the unit up and hook it into place, which is done thus, and then you can see that's quite solid. It's got to have a side piece put in, but obviously that board will be put in when this board goes in. There's going to be a piece of ply that goes there to fill that out, and yeah, I'm rather pleased with that. Now what I've got to do is to start building the sidewall and putting the panels on the back. Okay, so you're probably wondering how I put the frame together. So the best way I find is to actually draw a diagram, as you can see here. I've got the heights, I've measured the heights between the floor and the ceiling. So what I tend to do is I mark out the wood like this. You can see these are the 4 uprights there, and I've got the 2 smaller cross ones. You can just barely see them in this there. What I tend to do is then mark out the thickness of the joint using a piece of scrap. So this is an offcut from this piece of wood. I want it to be halfway across, hence this is a 30mm batten with a 15mm thick times 30mm. Just makes it easier for cutting these joints. Do the thickness of the wood there, and then just obviously turn it round to get your measurement and your pencil lines. So you can see the ones with the double hash on them are the pieces I'm cutting out, and then what will happen is I'll do the opposite on these bits. That will slot into there quite nice. Sorry, that way around. That will slot in there quite nicely and give you a really tight joint. Then for belt and braces, all you have to do is drill a hole in the side, pop a small screw in there, and it really holds it tight. You can glue it if you really want to, but I find that those screw joints are pretty tight as they are. Now the other tool you're going to need is one of these. So because I'll show you this end first, because all the ends are different heights, as you can see, you need to have a commonality. So down the other end I've clamped them all together, and I've measured from the floor coming up. So this mark here going across is the top of the door, and those joints I've just told you about, as you can see, I've already pre-marked those. That'll all tie in together, and then coming down the length of it, I'll put battens going across. I've got some battens here ready to be marked up. As I say, the set square means that when you put these on and draw your lines, it means they're all at the same height from the floor, which gives you a reference point to work to. That's because, as I said, the roof section slants down, and because you can't, it'll be extremely difficult to do it individually any other way. I can't even think how you would do it another way, but yeah, I always work from one end going upwards. But what I tend to use is a jointing tool. It's basically a frame with like a hacksaw blade on it. That gives a much finer cut, and that's what I'll be using on these, and I'll set that up in a little while and you can see it from there. Okay, so here is the the manual mitre saw, as I like to call it, mounted on a bench, clamped down. You can see the bits of wood there. When I've done that set square, I was just saying, I'll just zoom in over a little bit here. You can see the line across. Now, as I've said before in previous videos, if you're going to cut to the right of the line, don't cut on the line, because the thickness of this blade will put your joint out. If you want nice tight joints, cut right up to the line there. So as you can see by the tail of this line here, it's literally just to the right of it. If you do that and then use a chisel just to go across there with the grain, that will come off clean. If you've got a nice sharp chisel, you chisel that up totally flat from the end, and that'll make a nice tight joint. So that's what I'm doing with this now. So I'm now at the stage where I'm cutting all of the slots for the framework, and then I can start assembling it. Right, so as you can see, the framework is now in. Now, you're not going to believe this, so I'm going to prove it to you. This frame isn't fixed in. It is such a tight fit, he says blowing his own trumpet, that it's actually just resting there. But as you can see, it's quite solid between the lot. I'm very, very happy with that, and I think that's pretty good. All it requires now is to screw the battens together. As you can see, there's gaps here which will close up when the screws go in, and that's it. I'm pretty chuffed with that, considering that was just taken from measurements and put together. Right, okay, so now I'm started on the shower tray. As you can see, this is going to be a sunken tray. It's 100mm deep there, so what I've had to do is to make up yet another frame. Seems to spend my life making up frames, but this one's slightly different because I've got a wheel arch to go round as well, which just to make life a little bit more interesting. So what I've done is I've cut some wood, which is 11cm high. That's dead level with the actual wheel arch itself. I'm going to lay some plyboard on top of this. That will span there, which will support the actual tray itself. And then, because, as I said, this tray's got 100mm high step, I've come up from the base of this up to here, and the actual tray lip will sit on that. And just to prove the point, I'm just going to bring that into here. And as you can see, once that's pushed up against the wall like that, that'll be quite nice. There's going to be ply underneath this to support the centre, because you can see obviously at the moment there's a 5mm gap, a void there, which is what I'll be filling. A little bit more fiddly to cut, because obviously I'm cutting initially one sheet of plywood, then I've got to rest the tray on it, and I'll be marking around this outer edge here all the way around, cut that, and if you can see here, cut another board. So this will have a 5mm board on its own, resting on a sheet of ply underneath, so that it gives it more support. I don't know why they did this recess like that. It's a bit of a nuisance, because obviously if you've got a flat surface, and I could have just put a nice bit of ply down, you know, I could have had a nice flush finish. Instead, and this is the way you need to do it because it's easier, here's a piece of cardboard I prepared earlier, he says, in true Blue Peter fashion, and that's the template I'll be using to cut my support board underneath, and that will be a 5mm ply on top of those pieces there, and that should be more than enough to support it. And the one thing I do need to do is to bring the waste pipe, which is underneath the motorhome at the moment, up through the base of the toilet and back out that little piece there where the other pipes are, and then I can feed it into the waste trap, because there is a nice little gap under here for the pipe to come up, and the waste trap will be there. So yeah, I think that's all coming together quite nicely. Okay, so framework's now built and down, so these have now been fixed into place. I've used little angled brackets at the bottom to hold them in. It's much more sturdy. So all that remains now is to slot this piece in. I've taken the liberty of marking where these battens have gone. I've pre-drilled some holes, countersunked obviously, because I don't want the heads of the screws coming through. So that's in place now. So just need to shove some 25mm screws in there. So that's quite steady, and that's holding my weight quite nicely. It's bending a little bit there in the middle. I'm not worried. That's 5mm of ply, and the reason I'm not worried, because here's another 5mm of ply. I'm going to stop there because the next step for me, and you may be spotting the deliberate mistake, well, it's not a mistake actually, but I need to get the plumbing in, so I need to know where the drain hole is going to go. This is the inner part, so I know it's roughly there, but it's on order. So once that comes in, I can fit it to the actual shower tray itself, put the shower tray on here with the hole cut in the plastic, draw that circle round there, and then the pipe, which is just sitting on the underside here, I can reach in, feed that round, pull it up onto the underside, connect it all up, then offer the tray back down as to where it's going to go. Make sure this then is in the right place, glue it, screw it into a couple of these places here. This is why I haven't marked this one, but I'll probably get a couple of good 4 screws in there just to hold this, stop it slipping around, because you don't want that moving. And then silicone sealant all the way along the top of this edge to sit it on. Put the tray in, and that's it. It should be stuck into place then. So whilst I'm waiting for that delivery to come, which should be in the next few days, I'm going to crack on with the sidewall. So as you can see from this picture, I've now put the plywood up on the 3 walls to give us a bit more privacy, and that'll do for the toilet for the moment. I'm now turning my attention towards the kitchen because we need to have a sink and a hob.